The instant they directed me to a folding chair in the kitchen annex at my brother Lucas's wedding, my stomach knotted like I'd taken a punch. I was the groom's sister, the same one who had rescued our family business from ruin more times than anyone cared to admit. And yet, there I sat, squeezed between the caterers and a clipboard-wielding planner, treated like background help instead of family. 2 weeks later, I terminated our company's multi-million-dollar partnership with his in-laws firm. They thought they could shove me into the shadows on their picture-perfect day, but I was done being overlooked. I wanted them to see what happens when you belittle someone who's spent her whole life fighting to be respected. I grew up in a small, rain-soaked Seattle neighborhood where money was scarce and hard work never stopped. My parents owned a tiny carpentry shop, Harper Construction, and by the time I was 12, I was already balancing their checkbook because no one else knew how. Lucas, 3 years older, was the charmer, tall, magnetic, able to talk his way through any situation. He coasted through life while I was the practical one, more interested in math problems than fitting in. Dad had built Harper Construction from nothing but an old truck and raw determination. When I earned my MBA on a scholarship, I turned down cushy corporate offers and came home to rescue the business's fragile books. As CFO, I became the reason we stayed afloat, while Lucas, our smooth-talking vice president, wined and dined clients with recycled stories I could recite by heart. The family hierarchy was obvious. Lucas shone, I supported. My mother's face lit up whenever he entered a room, pride radiating from her, while my achievements, doubling revenue, landing major contracts, were dismissed as me just being good with numbers. My father liked to say Lucas brought life into the company, as if my endless 60-hour weeks of deal-making and budgeting were just paperwork. It hurt, but I bit my tongue, convincing myself that loyalty sometimes meant staying in the background. That illusion shattered when Lucas announced his engagement to Fatima, daughter of Edward and Lillian Sterling, owners of Sterling Developments, the top luxury real estate firm in the Pacific Northwest. Fatima was elegant, every gesture calculated. Her family's fortune loomed large, and their company happened to be our biggest client, secured through a contract I'd fought relentlessly to win. At their engagement party, held at the Sterling's grand estate overlooking Puget Sound, I felt like a guest in my own life. Lillian eyed me from head to toe in my carefully chosen dress and smiled thinly. "So professional, dear," she said, every syllable dipped in condescension. They introduced me as Lucas's sister, who helps with the business, conveniently omitting my title as CFO. Later that evening, I overheard Fatima and her mother murmuring on the terrace about fixing our small-town ways. The words froze me. In their eyes, Harper Construction was merely a rung on their ladder, and I was just an obstacle to be managed. The months leading up to the wedding felt like a slow drip of tiny insults. My mother kept nudging me to spend more time with the Sterlings, as if my job were just some pastime I should pause for their sake. Fatima would interrupt crucial meetings with calls about trivial details, asking things like what Lucas's favorite snacks were as a kid for her wedding video, and then brushing off my answers like they were cute trivia. Meanwhile, my father had started to look worn down, flinching when he thought I wasn't looking. But whenever I asked, he'd wave it off. "Just age catching up to me," he'd say, while Mom urged me to stop worrying and focus on Lucas's big day instead of inventing problems. The breaking point came when Lucas canceled our monthly sibling dinners. "Too busy with the Sterling family," he said. When I finally confronted him, his response hit me harder than I expected. "You're just jealous," he'd snapped. "You're miserable behind that desk while I'm actually happy." That's when I realized something between us had shifted, and it wasn't something I could just ignore. The morning of Lucas's wedding at Willow Creek Manor, a breathtaking vineyard tucked away in Washington's wine country, was deceptively perfect. The sky was clear, but the air felt charged, like a storm was waiting its turn. I'd spent hours getting ready, slipping into a deep emerald dress that matched the autumn theme, and splurging on professional hair and makeup, determined to look like I belonged among the polished Sterling crowd. But the moment I arrived, Fatima's wedding planner, a sharp-eyed woman named Kim, cornered me. "We need you to handle some vendor problems," she said briskly, shoving a clipboard into my hands. "Fatima says you're great with details." I blinked, confused. I'm the groom's sister, not staff. She didn't even flinch. Fatima's request. Family photos are already done. Must have been a miscommunication. My stomach dropped. I'd missed the moment my dad saw Lucas in his tux. Missed the champagne toast. All because I'd been running errands for a wedding that wasn't mine. By the time I managed to escape, the ceremony had already begun. My mother spotted me slipping in and hissed, "Where have you been? You're embarrassing us." I bit my tongue and took a seat in the back row, far from the family section where one of Lucas's old college friends sat with his wife. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Fatima looked every bit the image of luxury in her gown, and Lucas glowed like a man who'd just won the lottery. I wanted to be happy for him, I really did, but the sting of being sidelined ran too deep. At the reception, I navigated cocktail hour alone, dodging smug comments from sterling relatives about my numbers, job, and lack of a plus one. Career women are always too busy for relationships, one aunt said with a pitying smile. I forced a polite laugh, reminding myself this day wasn't about me. When I finally went to find my seat for dinner, I realized my name wasn't on any of the place cards in the main hall. A waiter noticed my confusion. "Are you the sister? You're seated in the kitchen annex." My chest tightened as I followed him into the card room next to the catering area. The single table sat there, with my name carved beside the planners and a photographer's assistant. The smell of grease and the clatter of pans filled the air. I just stood there, numb, as humiliation crept through me like slow poison. Then Lillian Sterling appeared behind me, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Oh, that's not a mistake, dear. Fatima thought you'd be the perfect person to help oversee the staff, given how managerial you are. And, well, we didn't want you to feel uncomfortable sitting alone at the family tables." Every word twisted the knife a little deeper. I looked across the hall toward the head table. Lucas laughing beside Fatima and her parents, my own family nearby, completely unaware I wasn't with them. I tried to reach Lucas, to at least say something, but he brushed me off like I didn't exist. "It's just seating. Sis, don't make a fuss. Appearances mean everything to them." His dismissive tone was the last straw, a betrayal that cut deeper than any insult ever could. As I left Willow Creek Manor, my phone buzzed. A message from Lucas: "Stop making this about you." Those 5 words burned into me, sparking a determination I didn't know I had. I wasn't fighting for a seat at their table anymore. I was fighting for my rightful place in a family and a company that had taken me for granted for far too long. The week after Lucas's wedding, I threw myself into work, burying the pain beneath spreadsheets and forecasts. But numbers don't lie. Late one Friday night, I noticed something odd. Small transactions, barely noticeable, yet together they added up to almost $2 million over 18 months. Tracing the transfers, I discovered they led to a holding company under Lucas's name, funneling money straight into Sterling Development's projects. My hands trembled as I printed the proof. This wasn't an accounting error. It was theft, happening right under my nose. I went straight to my father's office, ready for outrage or disbelief. Instead, he only sighed, his face weary. "I wondered when you'd find this," he said. My stomach turned. "You knew." He nodded, explaining that Lucas needed the funds to impress the Sterlings, calling it an investment in our future. Then came the real blow. He and Edward Sterling had been planning a merger for months, one that would swallow Harper Construction into Sterling Developments, with Lucas installed as a figurehead and me reduced to a consultant. "It's for the family," he murmured, eyes averted. "The Sterlings will elevate us." It felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. My father, the man who'd taught me to work hard and earn respect, was selling out both the company I'd built my life around and my place within it. "What about my future?" I demanded. He muttered something about adjustments and streamlining, but I understood. I was being replaced. That night, I met Daniel, our trusted accountant, at a quiet coffee shop in Seattle. He confirmed my worst fear. The merger was a takeover disguised as partnership, stripping Harper Construction of all independence. Worse, he'd overheard my father talking about his health, advanced cancer, maybe a year left. He hadn't told me. He'd rather protect Lucas's legacy than confide in me. The betrayal only hardened my resolve. Later, I slipped into the office after hours, using my father's all too predictable password to access his files. The merger documents laid everything bare. Harper Construction would become a Sterling subsidiary. My father would get a payout, Lucas a hollow title, and I'd be left with a 1-year consulting contract at half pay. Tears blurred my vision, not just for the company, but for all the years I'd spent earning a place they never intended to give me. Then I remembered my mentor's advice from business school. When emotion clouds your judgment, focus on strategy. I opened the Sterling contract I'd personally negotiated months earlier and found my saving grace, a termination clause I'd insisted on, giving the CFO the right to cancel any deal within 30 days in the event of a merger. For the first time, I realized the power was mine, and I was done being invisible. On the morning of Sterling Development's grand showcase, I arrived at Harper Construction before sunrise. The termination notice sat on my desk like a live grenade. I'd spent days preparing, gathering allies like Daniel, our operations head, and Claire, our marketing director, both of whom had seen the Sterling's arrogance firsthand. I'd also reached out to Benjamin from Cascade Enterprises, a developer we'd once turned down only out of loyalty to my father's partnership with the Sterlings. Benjamin was ready to team up the moment the Sterling deal was off the table. With Kim, our attorney, standing beside me, I signed the termination papers and delivered them to Edward Sterling's office by 7:30, leaving a copy for his legal department. By 8:45, I'd called an emergency board meeting. My father showed up looking pale and bewildered. "This could have waited," he muttered. I met his eyes and said quietly, "No, it can't." By 9 o'clock, the boardroom was filled, executives, directors, and attention so thick it felt like smoke. I stood and began handing out folders, proof of Lucas's fund transfers, the merger proposal, and projections showing how Sterling's plan would gut our company from the inside out. Over the past 18 months, I began, keeping my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest, $2 million have been funneled from Harper Construction into Sterling Development's projects without the board's approval. And on top of that, there's a concealed merger plan that would erase our independence and replace most of you with Sterling executives. Murmurs rippled through the room. My father's face lost all color. Before he could speak, Lucas stormed in, rage burning in his eyes. "What the hell, sis? The Sterling event starts in an hour and you're doing this now." I lifted the termination notice. "As CFO, I've ended our contract with Sterling Developments, effective immediately. According to the clause I negotiated, this action is within my rights." Lucas lunged toward me, but Daniel stepped in his path. Kim spoke up firmly. "She's acting under full authority. Section 17, subsection C." That's when Edward and Fodima burst in. Edward waved the notice like a threat. "This is unacceptable. We've got 200 VIPs, expecting our joint announcement today." Fodima spun toward Lucas, her voice sharp as a blade. "You told me you had her under control." I kept calm. "What's unacceptable is your misuse of our funds and a merger designed to dismantle Harper Construction." Edward's bluster filled the room, but then my father's frail, steady voice cut through the noise. "Olivia, is it true they sat you in the kitchen at the wedding?" I nodded. "Yes," and Lucas knew. He turned to my brother, disbelief etched deep in his face. "You allowed that?" Silence fell. My father pushed himself to his feet, his illness making him sway slightly, but his conviction was unshakable. "Edward, the merger is off. The termination stands, and we'll be launching a full investigation into the missing funds." The board voted unanimously to back me. Lucas abstained. As security escorted the Sterlings out, Fodima glared at Lucas. "Don't bother coming home. I married an executive, not a failure." My father pulled me into his arms, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. I was wrong." For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just as his daughter, but as the leader I had always been. The aftermath of that meeting was explosive. Sterling Development's stock crashed. Their grand showcase event collapsed without our partnership, and their investors fled. Meanwhile, Harper Construction surged ahead. Our new alliance with Cascade Enterprises opened doors to larger projects and our shift towards sustainable design. Led by Nathan, Fodima's brother, who defected to our side, pushed us to the front of the industry. Nathan had come to me just weeks after the confrontation, exposing Sterling's financial instability and proving his loyalty by handing over their internal files. I brought him on board, recognizing in him a genuine drive to build with integrity, a complete contrast to the greed that had destroyed his family's empire. My father's health declined quickly after the confrontation. One evening, he called us, my mother, Lucas, and me, into his hospital room. He looked frail, but his voice carried authority. "No more fighting," he said softly. "I failed both of you. Lucas, I made life too easy for you. Olivia, I never recognized your strength. Margaret loved you equally." He asked us to promise we'd try to heal as a family. A few hours later, he slipped away, surrounded by us and with his lifelong friend Henry at his side. At his funeral, the entire community showed up, a reflection of the legacy he had built over the years. 3 days later, we gathered in his study to read his final letter. He apologized for favoring Lucas, for placing impossible expectations on me, and urged us to forgive, not to erase what happened, but to move forward. Lucas asked to rejoin Harper Construction, not as vice president, but in a position he could truly earn, client relations where his empathy thrived. My mother, her voice trembling, admitted her own favoritism and vowed to do better. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a beginning. A year later, during the Harper Construction Memorial Benefit at the Evergreen Grand Hotel, we honored my father with a scholarship for aspiring pupils. Standing at the podium, pride and sorrow intertwined beside him. My father had always believed that success was meant to be shared. I told the crowd, "This company is a family, and tonight we grow that family by investing in the next generation." Lucas had become a true partner. His warmth earned clients' trust. My mother, gentler now, led our charitable work to continue my father's legacy. Even Nathan was thriving his sustainability projects and business. As the evening came to an end, I noticed Fatima among the event staff, the shadow of her former self. She confessed that her father had cut her off lavish payments and plans. I felt no satisfaction in seeing her fall, only a quiet strength. Family, after all, is complicated. I pointed her toward Nathan and told her to talk to him. Later that night, on the hotel rooftop with Lucas and my mother, I showed them our latest project, a sustainable community center named after my father. "It's what he would have wanted," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. My mother nodded, tears glistening. "It's beautiful." That night at Lucas's wedding table had once been my lowest point, but it also ignited something within me. I didn't just save the company. I reclaimed my worth. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing alone. But it's in those moments you discover the strength to build something greater. Thank you for walking beside me through this story. If it touched you, please like the video and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and fighting for what you deserve. And share it with someone who needs the reminder that respect is earned through courage, not just granted by blood.